Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. Few plotlines are as explosive as Kane Ashby's vicious scheme against Nick Newman and Sharon Collins in the high-stakes world of The Young and the Restless, where treachery, retaliation, and sinister secrets fuel the action. Kane, driven by rage and a desire for vengeance, makes the fatal decision to have Holden kill Mariah Copeland, the woman who has grown to be a crucial part of Nick and Sharon's lives. This startling order is not merely intended to kill Mariah, rather, it is a planned attack intended to cause Nick and Sharon as much suffering as Kane feels they have caused him. Kane's grudge is the result of long-standing animosity and a feeling of unfairness. Whether it's previous grievances, professional rivalry, or personal betrayals, Kane has had enough. He sees Nick and Sharon as the masterminds behind his demise, and he believes they should bear the consequences, not only their personal suffering, but also the loss of a loved one. Mariah becomes the ideal target because of her strong bonds with Sharon and Nick. They would be emotionally broken by her passing, left defenseless and bereft. The hesitant assassin, Holden, is forced to play this risky game. His involvement provides another level of suspense, regardless of whether he is a man with a personal grudge, a desperate ally, or a faithful enforcer. Will his conscience, or other factors, intervene, or will he carry out Kane's orders? Mariah's life is on the line, and Nick and Sharon are unaware of the impending danger, so the stakes are higher than ever. Viewers are left wondering as the story progresses, will Mariah make it out alive? Can Sharon and Nick find out before it's too late? And what will Kane's desire for vengeance ultimately cost him? This plotline promises to provide the gripping, suspenseful drama for which The Young and the Restless is renowned, with deceit, peril, and emotional upheaval at every step. Love and hate are two sides of the same coin in Genoa City, and when retribution takes hold, nobody is safe, as Kane's cunning plan demonstrates. Everyone's lives will be affected by this assassination plot, which may result in further murder as well as damaged relationships and betrayal of trust. One thing is certain: when secrets are revealed and allegiances are put to the test, revenge never goes as planned, and the cost of Kane's wrath might be greater than even he realized. Kane's visage was clouded by the grief and betrayal that had hardened him over the past few months as he stood in the shadows of the chilly stone corridor of the Dumas house. He had shed all of that like a worn skin, and he no longer recognized the guy he had been as a husband, parent, or lover. All that remained was a raw, blazing hatred that was pouring through his veins like wildfire. Because Mariah Copeland was Nick and Sharon's heart, and hurting her meant hitting them where it counted, rather than because she was his actual enemy, her visage flashed through his head. He had lost everything to Nick, including Lily's confidence, his reputation in the business community, and, worst of all, the lies he said that made so many people in Genoa City dislike him. Kane had discovered the hard way that quiet frequently conveyed the loudest message, and although Sharon had feigned neutrality, her silence was treachery in and of itself. Finding Holden, the guy with no history and no conscience, a professional ghost with a debt to Kane and no loyalty to the citizens of Genoa City, had taken months. He had discovered him in Budapest, operating under a false identity, evading law enforcement, and staying one step ahead of the law. Kane, however, gave him what no one else could: forgiveness, a fresh start, and a salary large enough to purchase lifelong silence. And now, silent and lethal, Holden stood before him in the Dumas wine cellar's wavering twilight, awaiting the order. Kane gave Holden the folder with Mariah's schedule, pictures, routines, and, most importantly, her weaknesses without flinching. "Pretend it was an accident. But make sure it hurts," he replied in an emotionless voice. It wasn't about Mariah, and he didn't want her to suffer because of personal animosity. It was about what would happen to Nick and Sharon if she didn't show up. He intended to twist that knife. Nick had warned him to avoid Lily, his daughter, and his so-called family, he recalled, standing over him at crimson lights. Nick had never lost that arrogant superiority. And Sharon, always acting like a counselor, showing concern, and ignoring the deception and manipulation going on around her. As he repeatedly had to scrape his name out of the muck, Cain had seen them both receive opportunity after opportunity and redemption after redemption. When Lily passed away, Cain's plunge into darkness turned into a freefall, or so the world thought. Nobody really understood the depth of his sorrow. Nobody gave a damn that he had to hide his future and his spark beneath a veil of dishonesty. Something within him Cain exploded as it was revealed that Lily had been alive and had been held and controlled by those connected to Nick's inner circle. This was not fair. It was war. Holden nodded once and turned to go, taking the folder silently. For a few minutes afterward, Cain remained there, gazing into the flames as the moment's gravity descended upon him. Death was not something he ordered lightly. But he was now the type of man who was able to. Mariah was supposed to go to a high-profile, heavily photographed, and extremely vulnerable benefit at the top of the tower. It was an easy strategy. A tumble. A breakdown in structure. An improper thrust. Holden was skilled at causing mayhem and getting away with it. Cain didn't require the specifics. All he needed was the outcome. But a glimmer of doubt began to creep into his chest as the hours went by and daylight drew near. Not regret. Just the sour admission that he had gone too far and couldn't turn back. The finality of what was going to happen awakened something primitive, but he wasn't concerned about remorse because he had already buried that long ago. But this was what Nick and Sharon had caused themselves, he told himself. Like puppeteers, they manipulated people's lives. While others suffered as a result of their errors, they portrayed themselves as heroes. Not anymore. For Cain, this was an act of balance rather than murder. In Genoa City, Mariah was getting ready for the occasion without realizing that everyone was observing her every action. That morning, Tessa had an odd feeling, perhaps a mother's intuition, but dismissed it when Mariah kissed her goodbye and laughed it off. The previous evening, the elevator in the tower's private room had been serviced, and the new maintenance technician, Holden disguised, made adjustments that would later prove to be lethal without anybody questioning him. Cain remained hidden, watching the news channels, waiting for anything, a whisper, a headline. He was unable to attend. This didn't operate that way. He was the genius behind the scenes. But even while he waited, he kept thinking about Lily and what she would think of this. Should she ever learn? Nevertheless, she wouldn't. She was unable to. Cain was out of town taking care of Dumas' business, as far as anyone knew. He had a flawless alibi. Furthermore, Holden had never failed a mission before. Hours went by. Then the warning arrived. A socialite from Genoa City was hurt in an apparent accident, according to the article Tragedy at the Top of the Tower. Still alive. Cain's gaze grew strained. Mariah's body crashed into the orchestra pit below as she fell from a catwalk above the stage, according to the news report. Several fractures. Severe trauma to the head. Unconscious. But still living. Holden didn't succeed. Had he? Cain's cell rang. Holden's communication was secure, complication. Security stepped in. All it said was, she was supposed to be alone. Don't apologize. No offer to remedy it. Simply the facts. After a prolonged period of staring at the screen, Cain slammed the phone into the wall. He did not desire this. He didn't need this closure. There would be inquiries now. Inquiries. Fingerprints. Instead of leaving loose ends, Holden was meant to vanish. And now, Mariah was in a hospital bed with people who were sympathetic and encouraging, exactly the opposite of what Cain wanted. He desired for Nick to be broken. He wanted Sharon to plead for clarification. He desired for them to drown in the same sense of emptiness that he had experienced. He had more mess instead. More danger. And uncertainty is the worst. The press gathered outside Memorial Hospital early the following morning. With tears on her face and her arms wrapped around Tessa, Sharon stood next to her. With his jaw clenched, Nick told the media that he would track down the person responsible. It wasn't good that he brought up foul play. It indicated that someone had noticed something. Kane's mind raced as he watched the coverage from a remote hotel outside the city. Was Holden careless? Was it his intention to implicate Kane? Was it a setup? Paranoia gnawed at the periphery of his consciousness. Not even the man he bribed could be trusted. Furthermore, Kane's name might have already been floating in rumors if Holden had been spotted. He demanded a second cleanup crew and called his fixer in Prague. Holden had to be erased. No ties. No power. No trail. For a fee, the fixer consented. Kane didn't think twice. He burned the final piece of paper connecting him to the assassination attempt and wired the money. However, the dominoes were already falling as he attempted to cut all ties. Kevin Fisher, who is currently employed by the city as a cybersecurity specialist, discovered evidence of a compromised elevator diagnostic system. Although it took some time, the trail eventually led to Kane. Devon began to inquire, as he was always wary of Kane's recent actions. Clear-eyed and damaged, Tessa recalled a strange man among the crowd. She told the police sketch artist about him. Although it wasn't an exact replica of Holden, it was close enough for the system to raise concerns. And Sharon, she fell silent. Too silent. Kane recognized that expression. She wasn't in mourning. She went hunting. She had spent years dealing with addicts, liars, and broken brains. When anything didn't add up, she recognized it. Something sinister had been triggered in Mariah by her near-death experience. And Nick was back to his warrior ways, mobilizing supporters, making connections, and requesting favors. All of this became increasingly risky for Kane the longer Mariah lived. Sitting by himself in the dark with a drink of scotch, he watched the fireplace flames flicker and pondered how everything had gone so wrong. It was the ideal plan. The motivation was obvious. However, he had misjudged his adversary's tenacity. Worse, he had misjudged the pandemonium that would result from working with a man like Holden. Kane had to change course now that Holden was on the run and his own life was being scrutinized. Erasing his presence from the board was the next phase, not finishing Mariah. If that meant pretending to be someone else or completely leaving Genoa City, then so be it. However, a voice in the back of his head warned him this was not the end of it even as he made plans to flee. Not quite yet. Because once revenge is in motion, it never stops. One unsuccessful strike is not the end of it. It develops, festers, and makes demands. Mariah was only the start. Sharon and Nick had only started to make payments. Kane Ashby, who was consumed by anger, grief, and the desire for justice, wasn't done yet. By no means. The young and the restless complex web of treachery, retaliation, and emotional upheaval takes a startling and sinister turn when Kane decides to instruct Holden to kill Mariah in retaliation against Nick and Sharon. This plot explores the individual's moral and psychological complexity in great detail, revealing the severe desperation and agony that push people to extreme measures. Kane, a character who has seen his share of manipulation and heartache, reaches a breaking point when his need for vengeance overrides his common sense. His personal grievances, perceived betrayals, and unresolved problems that have festered over time are the root of his hatred against Nick and Sharon. Kane intends to do the greatest amount of emotional suffering possible by focusing on Mariah, a person who is very important to both Nick and Sharon. This will strike at the core of their happiness in a manner that simple physical or monetary devastation could never accomplish. It is especially tragic that Mariah was chosen as the victim since, to many, she is a symbol of loyalty and innocence, making her an improbable but devastating player in Cain's perverse game of retaliation. The man Cain gives this lethal task to, Holden, is a complicated individual who struggles with his own morality and the obligations Cain places on him. Holden and Cain have a tense relationship because of his fear of the repercussions of disobedience and his unwillingness to commit such a horrible deed. Because viewers are left wondering if Holden will carry out the killing or figure out a method to thwart Cain's objectives, this internal conflict heightens the excitement in the plot. Holden suffers a severe psychological burden as he struggles with the guilt of killing an innocent life, a choice that may follow him for the rest of his life. Further emotional complexity is added by his encounters with Mariah prior to the planned act, as Cain's well-planned plan is threatened by moments of hesitancy and guilt. The audience's fear for Mariah's fate is heightened by the fact that she continues to live her life with the same warmth and tenacity that make her so lovable to everyone around her, oblivious to the danger that hangs over her. Such a scheme has far-reaching consequences that go well beyond the actual deed. The consequences of Holden's successful assassination of Mariah would be devastating for Genoa City, permanently changing the lives of Nick, Sharon, and innumerable others who were impacted by her. Nick would be driven to the verge of despair after enduring many personal storms, and his sadness can show out as self-destructive behavior or an insatiable need for his own retribution. Because of her emotional vulnerability and maternal instincts, Sharon, who is already accustomed to sorrow, would be devastated by Mariah's passing. The weight of their shared sadness might either entirely shatter the couple's relationship, which is already stressed due to prior betrayals and outside influences, or it could unite them in their joint mourning. The narrative's examination of how violence breeds more violence would be further enhanced by the ripple effects, which would also affect other important characters, such Mariah's friends and co-workers, who would find it difficult to understand such a senseless crime. All those involved would be permanently scarred by the assassination attempt, even if it is stopped at the last second. Mariah would have to face the depths of human brutality and the frailty of life once her feeling of security was permanently upended. Nick and Sharon would have to face the fact that their previous deeds, whether true or imagined, have repercussions that go beyond themselves and endanger their loved ones. Unavoidably, Cain's position as the plot's mastermind would be revealed, sparking a dramatic encounter that would reveal long-kept truths and rekindle old rivalries. Cain would have serious moral and legal ramifications because his turn into a villain would drive away even his supporters, isolating him in his resentment. Holden would have to face his own consequences whether he carried out the act or not, since his participation, whether voluntary or forced, would make him face his true nature and his capacity for decision-making. Justice, retaliation, and the cyclical nature of violence are all explored in depth in the storyline's thematic undercurrents. Cain's conviction that his acts are justifiable illustrates the destructive force of bitterness and how it prevents him from seeing the humanity of the people he wants to harm. His incapacity to let go of his complaints keeps him stuck in a vicious circle of self-destruction, where every act of retribution just makes his suffering worse. How far can someone be pushed before they turn into the antagonist in someone else's story? This is another question the story poses regarding the nature of accountability. As a contrary, Holden's moral quandary emphasizes the conflict between morality and loyalty, as well as the question of whether one may be saved after crossing certain boundaries. As the accidental victim of this vengeance, Mariah represents the collateral damage that results from such personal conflicts, serving as a reminder to the audience that seeking retribution is never a tidy or fulfilling way to settle a conflict, but rather a journey fraught with unexpected consequences. This plot's execution and timing would be crucial to preserving its emotional effect. As Holden's internal battle develops, the tension would gradually increase, with viewers being kept on edge by near misses and moral dilemmas. The history between Cain, Nick, and Sharon might be highlighted with flashbacks, giving background information on the genesis of Cain's resentment. Every encounter Mariah has with Holden would be tinged with underlying dread as a result of the use of dramatic irony, in which the viewer is aware of the threat while she is unaware of it. Whether it ends in disaster or a last-minute intervention, the conclusion must be handled carefully to avoid coming across as opportunistic and instead serve as a moving reflection on the price of retribution. In the end, the plot of Kane's order to kill Mariah in retaliation against Nick and Sharon pushes the limits of The Young and the Restless, going deeper than usual while preserving the character-driven drama and emotional depth that have made the program a mainstay for decades. It forces the audience and the characters to face tough issues of retaliation, forgiveness, and the boundaries of human endurance. The story would have a lasting effect on Genoa City residents' lives, altering the narrative landscape for upcoming seasons regardless of whether it ended in tragedy or redemption. A testament to the timeless appeal of soap opera storytelling at its best, the examination of such profound subjects guarantees that this plotline will be regarded as one of the show's most captivating and emotionally charged arcs.